Okay. I now have the honor of introducing Toby Barlow. He's our man ambassador for the day. I don't know how he feels about that title. Toby's leadership is really one of the main reasons I personally wanted to join Team Detroit, and I talked to many candidates that feel the same way. And for anyone that doesn't already know Toby, I just like to tell you a little bit about him because I'm in awe of what he does, not just here at Team Detroit, but for the city of Detroit. In fact, if you didn't know, Metro Times newspaper once named Toby the best candidate for intergalactic ambassador of Detroit. And here's just a sampling of his accomplishments. He's our global chief creative officer for Team Detroit and for Blue Hive, leading creative for Ford Worldwide. Toby's an accomplished novelist. He's published 2 books, and he's written for the New York Times, the Paris Review, Salon, the Huffington Post, and many other publications. He's an investor, a philanthropist, and a business owner in multiple Detroit organizations, including co-owner of Nora, the Midtown design-focused retailer. He's co-owner of Gold Cash Gold, which I think we lost April because she was just here, but with April and others, in Corktown. He's the co-founder of Write a House, which is a Detroit residency writing program. He's co-founder of Signal Return, a traditional letterpress print shop in the Eastern Market. And he's also on the board of Friends School Detroit, which is an independent school that actually temporarily closed in 2015, but they are working very hard to reopen in fall of 2016 and provide more educational options in the city of Detroit. So I once asked Toby, how do you possibly fit this all in? And his response to me was, well, it helps that I don't watch sports on TV. So it's my great honor to introduce Toby Barlow.
Thank you. We'll just leave the slide up, so if you have any questions for me, you can write Michelle and ask her. They booked an hour for me, and I don't really have an hour of stuff to share, but I'll talk for a little while, and then, I don't know, it might be interesting to ask questions of the man ambassador and see if that works out. But this is one of my favorite quotes of recent social media posting, which was Aziz Ansari wrote, if you believe that men and women have equal rights, and then someone asks you if you're a feminist, you have to say yes, because that's how words work. You can't be like, yeah, I'm a doctor who primarily does diseases of the skin, and someone says, oh, so you're a dermatologist? And you say, oh, no, that's way too aggressive a word, not that, not at all. So I'll pass that around, someone can steal that. That's good. You know, I wanted to start out actually with a pretty terrible story, which I think was an interesting story, which was a guy who worked for WPP who ultimately had to resign his position. And his name was Neil French. And when I grew up, Neil French was this legend. He was an ad guy off in the Far East, and he wrote amazing ads that won awards. And ultimately, WPP, our holding company, hired him to be the creative director of all of WPP. And he went to some, seminar in Toronto, and he said something along the lines of, women don't make it to the top because they don't deserve to. Saying their roles as caregivers and child bearers prevented them from succeeding in top positions. It was a shock. He basically said, it was all wrong. His position was all wrong, and his position was, basically that we train these women. If we take everyone in junior positions equally, men and women, and we train the women, we invest in women. Ultimately, a large percentage of women find partners. They go off, they get jobs. They have kids, and they start raising families, and that distracts them and basically erodes the investment we've made in them. Right? So he's like, that's a total waste. Yeah. But it was interesting because it was sort of, the British are funny people, and they have, their own caste system and their own sort of, old-fashionedness, I guess. But what I thought was interesting was he was dead wrong, but what he was pointing out was a structural problem. not a personal problem. And what this seminar and these ideas are is how do we address the structure and how do we attack the structure in a way that can bring people who have great ideas and are completely capable of doing all the work back into the roles that they can actually command and control and contribute to. So it's sort of like he was half right, and in being half right, he was completely all wrong. So the question I have, and so just a little bit of background on me and my feelings about women in the workplace. I was raised by a single working mom. My father's another story. But I was raised by and very absentee parenting. I had a sister who we would kind of cook dinners together, but it was sort of like my mom would be like, well, there's cheese in the one drawer in the fridge and there's a tortilla in the other drawer, so I'm counting on you guys to figure it out. And so and then I grew up and I had kids. Well, I had kids young, so I almost grew up and then I had kids. And I had daughters. So my whole life has been just surrounded by women, which makes me completely dependent on them. Emotionally, intellectually, any way you think of it. I mean, I'm basically like, that's and actually, Dan, the other answer for Tracy's question about how I do all this stuff is I delegate, because I'm fundamentally a very lazy, spoiled boy who's really used to saying to my sister, can't you do that? My sister's like, yeah, I'll do it. And it's terrible, but I try to use it as a force for good, in terms of accomplishing things. But that's, I think is something, and again, I think it's a good thing to keep in mind is, and it's the greatest human practice, I think, is empathy. Empathy allows you to get past so many horrible emotions. So and in my course, and again, I can't tell you guys anything. I mean, you guys are living your lives and you're up against it and your struggles, and my struggles aren't your struggles. But I can tell you how I try to adapt, and I can give you some perspective on what I think the overall problems are, and for what it's worth. But I think that empathy is a really, and empathy is easiest when you're looking at yourself, right? So when you're looking in the mirror, when I look in the mirror, I totally know what that guy's problems are. I totally feel for him. And I think that we are such primitive animals that we start working from 1 degree of separation to that. So when I'm looking at a guy who's kind of my height and kind of looks like me, it's kind of my age, I'm like, I totally know what you're going through because I'm that stupid, and so if I'm looking at a guy who's kind of my age but a little shorter than me, I'm like, I kind of know what you're going through except for the short thing. That, I don't know, and then just keep going from there, and it takes work to get to the far end of that spectrum. If I'm talking to a small young or tiny old, like the beautiful video of that woman dancing in the White House yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's a cute moving lady. So a tiny 106-year-old African-American woman, I'm like, okay, I can totally empathize with you somewhat, but you are at the far end of that spectrum. So it's going to take some work for me, and I've got to not be lazy. I've got to actually exert myself in some sense to have that amount of empathy. But that's how I measure our worth, in a sense. It's how far can we go? And for a lot of people, they're so exhausted, they're so time stressed, they're so lazy, or check any one of those three. They don't have time to step away from the person in the mirror. All they're looking at when they get up in the morning till they go to bed at night is the person in the mirror, and as close as they can get to that, the better, and that's something I just think we all have to have empathy with in some weird way. We have to reverse that and understand that those issues or those problems. I mean, honestly, that's where all my breakthroughs are. When I'm having a problem with somebody, Professionally, and Linda knows this, I have problems with people professionally, bring it to HR. But when I'm having problems with people professionally, I immediately, like, that's my work. My work is how can I empathize with this person and what they're, because I don't understand them at all. I don't understand their problem with me. I don't understand why they're asking for this meeting. I got this thing, da-da-da, ba-da-da. And I'm like, okay, well, but where are they in their journey? The phrase, like, where are they coming from? Which is like a cliche phrase, and yet if you really meditate on it, it's a profoundly deep phrase. So where are they coming from, and how can I see that, and how can I feel that? And maybe I won't get there, but maybe I can get close to there, I mean, that 106-year-old woman dancing in the White House was my grandmother, and my grandmother was so to my dad, I'm going to give you all my family issues with you guys. My dad was a congressman. He was a one-term congressman, and which the only high point was, and like I think the only reason God gave him that was so he could take my grandmother to the White House, to the Clintons' Christmas party, and so she could walk up to Hillary Clinton and be like, "You went to Wellesley? I'm a Wellesley girl," and that was it. That was the end of my dad's political career. That was their destiny. So that I think is, when you talk about me being an ambassador, that's the greatest perspective I can bring, which is that idea of everyone's lazy, or they're overworked, or some math, equation. I'm generally lazy and overworked, which is how it works. But I was blessed. I was blessed by growing up with militant, feminist, a mother who, we had an African American, this guy Charlie, who was her partner for a while, and he was an intense guy, and he was like the coolest thing when I was in elementary school to junior high school, right? So I grew up in Chevy Chase, which was like Grosse Pointe, and in the mid-'70s, it was about as tolerant as Grosse Pointe was in the mid-'70s. So my mother living with this African-American guy was kind of intense for the neighborhood. And, there was they like had a meeting about what they were going to do about Harriet and her boyfriend. And Mrs. Walters across the street, this little tiny white-haired lady said, interrupted this meeting of all these racist assholes and was like, if you guys are telling me that Toby Barlow can't come over and eat cookies on my porch in the summertime, I'm going to sell my house and move away. And that shut them all down. They were like, okay, never mind, we'll just raise it somewhere else. And so, and Charlie was the coolest guy. He would take my mom to the Super Bowl. He had this amazing story about how he'd been drafted to the NFL, and then he was going to be a quarterback for Baltimore, and then they said there were no black quarterbacks. This was long before that, and so they changed his position, and he walked out of the training camp because he was like, I'm a quarterback. And to me, I'm in like elementary school. It's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. So I learned about, he had the coolness of this professional sport guy, I had the coolness of this guy who, and he lived on the same block with Meadowlark Lemon. So I had all these cool things. And it taught me a lot. It really taught me a lot. And then my mother was also this super feminist, and she thought that Gloria Steinem was kind of lame and weak. And I would literally go and pick up the chains. They were I don't know why she left them lying around the kitchen, but chains that she chained herself to the State Department fence, she left lying in the kitchen on top of the washing machine. So if you want to do a wash, you were like, I gotta move the chain. So I don't know what she was teaching us with that, but it taught me a lot. And she would have these dinner parties, and we had this big table, this medieval table, and she'd have these women come, and they would just complain about men all the time. And I was like this little 8-year-old kid. You're different, Toby. You're different. I'm like, I'm 8. I think it helped. It helped open the doors in terms of who people were and what was cool and what wasn't, and what was acceptable and what wasn't. And I was sort of then sent out in the world into this very white male dominated world. And I have to say, I've sort of I've tried to be as inclusive and open and bring people in as much as I can. But it takes everybody calling bullshit on everybody in the nicest possible way, in the most powerful, positive way to make sure that happens, because if I'm running late or if I'm feeling time stressed, I'm going to default to the mirror, and that's not cool, and it's super lazy. And I just need someone to hold the door and say, you forgot something, or are you thinking about that, or hello, and I'll wake up to it, And in a weird way, I think today it doesn't take a super feminist mom with a black boyfriend who was in the NFL and hasn't been a lucky lemon, you don't need all that to get someone to remember to keep the door open. You just need to be like, hey, The other thing I wanted to say was, I think it's really important to recognize that you're not missing anything, you didn't miss anything. If you stepped out of the workplace for 6 months or 6 years, you didn't miss anything, because either the same stupid stuff is going on that was happening when you left, or B, it's so totally all new that nobody has figured out how it works yet. And I'll tell you a story about that, but you have to keep it in these walls. And we'll edit it out. So, I had Google in my office the other day, and the senior people here in Google, who are friends, who are individually really nice people who I've worked with and I really like. And I said to them, with all due respect, I think Google is a fraudulent organization. And when you say with all due respect, it's the worst phrase, because it kind of means I get a pass for this, right? And it really means no. And what I meant was, they bought this. They 25 years ago or 20 years ago, they built this amazing search engine. That's what those two guys did. And then they got a lot of respect for it, and they got the leverage to buy this AdSense, this way of buying media, which made them so much money, more money than God when you put those two things together. And then their friends invented YouTube, and they bought that too. So one invention and two acquisitions, and that's it. That's kind of like the end of the story, right? Their automatic cars haven't happened yet, their glasses are a failure, da-da-da-da. And they keep talking to us about these things they're going to do, this programmatic buying, and it's like, it's really smart what they talk about. But I said, is anybody doing that? They're like, no one's doing it yet. I'm like, yeah, I know. No one's doing it. No one's figured out how to do it yet, right? So it hasn't happened. So the revolution hasn't actually happened yet. Everybody's on time for the revolution. And so, if you show up, I was at this meeting the other day, and I'm like, it was another Google meeting, it was in London. I'm like, okay, I've got a really stupid question. I'm gonna ask it, and it's either stupid one of two ways. It's either stupid, like they're gonna look at me like, duh, of course we do that, that's so stupid. Or they're gonna be like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, that's pretty stupid. So I didn't ask it. Later, I was like, hey, how about this question? They're like, yeah, we don't do that. I'm like, that's pretty stupid. So that's what we need, right? We need the fresh eyes and the fresh perspective. I mean, you guys know all the obvious stuff. You guys know you have the buying power, and that's even the recorded buying power. There's the subtle, unrecorded buying power that you actually have too, I don't really buy anything without thinking about what my partner is going to think about it. So I think you guys actually have like 91% buying power. But you guys know all that. What I don't think that you know is that your fresh eyes and fresh perspective, and just a little bit of, everything's on the web. You can learn everything. You can learn. So here's another story. I worked on it for a technology company, Sun Microsystems. And I had the most horrible client in the world. And she loved the lingo, the technology, server farm, data processing, built-in redundancy, And I was coming from, I'd been advertising like deodorant the day before. So I was like, wow, she really knows her stuff. And then I would go home and I would study, and I'd look it up online, on the internet, and I'd come to the next meeting, and I'm like, oh yeah, so that built-in redundancy thing, and she would freak out. She's like, oh, he's mastered the language. And she would end the meeting really quickly, so she could go and study new words. And it was like only, so I had like a 3-hour, I was always behind her by like an hour and a half, 3 hours, no more than that. That's all you need, for the most part. If you're smart and aggressive and pay attention and show up, and you understand what your point of difference is and the point of view that you can bring, you can create the hunger for that. And the other thing is you're the other, right? If you go back to my man in the mirror, and the other is something that we're all like, yeah, how do we sell to the other? I know how to sell to me. I know how to make a joke that I get. I know how to market to me really well. But I don't know how to market to the other. And you're the solution to that. You sit down in the chair and you go, I'm the other. I know how to market to me. I know how to tell the story. I mean, I'm speaking from the point of view of an advertising copywriter, but whatever you're doing, if you're speaking to a man, I'm ambassador, that's what I think you want to be, projecting, because you do have the answers. And if you don't have the lexicon, it takes about a day and a half to get it. And if you encounter behavior that is confusing to you, try, I don't know how to say this. I mean, you have every right to be angry and indignant and pissed off and walk out or do whatever you want to do. Every right to, all your feelings are valid. I'm one of those horrible boyfriends who, when my partner is upset, I immediately start trying to find a solution to what's upsetting her, instead of acknowledging that those feelings actually are valid. We all want, and I want validation for my feelings too. That's why I go to Linda's office. But you're absolutely right to have those feelings, and you should embrace those feelings. But also, the only thing I would just say is just remember to have empathy for the blindness of the person that you're talking to, because that's a handicap, and we're taught to be empathetic for those who have handicaps. So. That's all I sort of prepared. Again, I don't know if you guys want to ask me questions or talk about anything. Talk about my feelings. Ask me more about my feelings. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for talking about empathy, because I remember my first advertising job was with Primarily Men, and I really felt there wasn't empathy, let alone sympathy, any kind of empathy, anything like that. So I just think, to me, it's so refreshing, and it makes me very hopeful for my future of getting back into advertising again, to hear a man stand up there and not only be a man ambassador, but
a man bastard? Because I'm that too. I am that too.
It was my first grade But I just, you don't hear that talked about very much these days, is having empathy for other people and just the world in general. So thank you, it's very refreshing.
Oh, great.
But is it real?
I mean, again, it's a practice, it's a practice. I think that I mean, most of the things I do in life, I get a solid C+. But I think just being, I've got a good friend, he abuses the word mindful. He's always like, just be mindful, be mindful. I'm like, duh. But I think it takes everything to pull it off.
I coach him daily.
All right. Well, did anybody have any sandwiches? Anything else? Pardon?
I have one of my first.
Okay, yeah. Dude, load up on everything because it's just going to get chucked. Yes.
So earlier today, we spent a lot of time talking about what we think our challenges are to get back in. From your perspective, what do you think is the biggest challenge, like, from the company's side?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really, really good question. It sort of goes back to the Neil French thing, the guy I was talking about, the jerk British guy. Because I think that he just didn't see, he just didn't see a way back in. It's like, they just leave and they're gone, I think encouraging processes like this, and functions like this, the one thing Tracy and I were talking about was, I love that Team Detroit's doing this, right? It's fantastic. But we really need to publicize the fact that we did this, and we need to celebrate the fact that we did this, not to make actually the opposite of making Team Detroit, because I love you all dearly, but we can't hire all of you tomorrow. But but there are organizations out there that need to recognize that this is a process that we all need to be embracing. So the more that we can structurally say, okay, this is the thing we're doing now, we're internships, or the same thing, returnships, makes a lot of sense. It's actually, I think the other cool part about it is the sort of way it allows people to either moonwalk, or, I don't like the word pivot, but go into, to use this as an opportunity to sort of get into new disciplines and bring their strengths from one job, once they step out and they get a perspective on what their actual strengths are, what's going on out there, to apply to a new discipline.
That's completely my goal.
Great, but I think that's the kind of thing that we need to be embracing this for. So the more that that's sort of the easiest and maybe the best answer. So like AdCraft is an organization, that serves the advertising community. They need to be doing this, across all agencies, right? So we were talking about, is it Nitro who does it? Sapient Nitro?
Yeah,
so they do it, we do it, but every agency in the next 24 months needs to be doing this. And so you guys need to... You guys need to make that. You should applaud yourselves, because you guys are going to be the ones that are going to make it happen. Because you're going to be like, hey, I just got done looking at Sapiens and looking at Team Detroit's. What's yours? I think that's a really important next step. So, and that's the other thing too, is that we all have to fight for ourselves. We have to fight for everybody too. It's a full-time job. So the more you can use this as sort of a lever to celebrate this idea, the better.
What do you think the challenges are going to be from the people doing the returnships? Like,
you mean on the agency side?
Yeah, for you guys. Like, is it going to be the fact that they don't, maybe there's a gap in technology knowledge, or there's going to be a gap in, I don't know.
It changes. The only thing is going to be patience. The only thing is that we're creatures of habit, and we like our fly patterns. We like to get up and get our coffee, and then get to work and say hi to that person, and check our Facebook, and then get to work, and get to that meeting, and put up with that person's bullshit, and talk about that person's bullshit, and you know what I mean? It's like, and you guys are all the challenge to that. You're a breaker that's like, hey, can you think about things a little different for like 20 fucking minutes? It's like we just seem to be like, Shannon, can you help? That's so you're a circuit breaker, and you gotta be comfortable being that, and you gotta acknowledge that you are that. But at the same time, you also have to act like it's super easy, because it depends on the discipline. But for the most part, going back to my earlier point of nobody knows anything. For the most part, like the tools are all pretty simple and automated. It's the intelligence that we want, and the energy, and the drive, and the organizational passion, and the ability to get things done. That's all we want. The training, all that stuff. It's like, again, if you interrupt me for those 20 minutes in a way that makes me think, we can figure that out. But you are probably, I don't know what percentage. You're encountering a lot of people who are like, I really don't want anyone to mess with my flow here, Because we're also creatures of fear. We're huge. I'm a white male living in the early 21st century. I'm the luckiest creature that ever was made, and I'm about 3 degrees away from total petrified fear. You know what I mean? Like, if 5 things happen, I'll be like, Linda, what the hell? We're all fearful creatures. So breaking that flight pattern is, in a very small way, a threat. I don't want to overstate it in that way, but that's just another point of empathy, which is that even the strongest people are waiting. Like the Goliaths are waiting for those little rocks from David to hit them in the temple, lay them out. So they're just, we're petrified creatures.
Change is hard.
Change is really hard, and even. But the other thing is we're also generous people. I think that we really are. I think so. It's like there's fear, there's vanity, there's generosity. It's not a great 2 out of 3. But I think that asking people for their generosity, you can without it being. I don't know. It's a hard one to answer, but just be comfortable with the knowledge that you're breaking into something. And then, but again, it's much easier if you get the systems to do it for you, right? So if you get these systems, if we can get, and it shouldn't just, I don't know, beyond the advertising agencies, like, does Quicken have this? Yeah, so, like, what are the other, does Blue Cross Blue Shield have this? You know, I mean, what are the other organizations that we can make sure do this? How can we make sure that everybody, does the White House do this? I mean, I'm not even really joking. I mean, if Michelle did this, it would be, a lot of people would notice, you know? Yeah.
So just kind of piggyback on what or just kind of add, I guess, punctuation to that. I did last month, I just somehow, like 3 a.m., I should have been sleeping. It was like 3 a.m. Twitter, you know, my husband's snoring, I can't sleep. So Twitter, I see the Marcus Graham Project. So the name struck a bell, you know, it's like Eddie Murphy's character from the movie Boomerang. So that's what made me, you know, say, oh yeah, that was funny, he was sweet. So I go on it, just send my resume, boom, whatever. Didn't really know what it was, forgot about it because of the holiday. Then I get into the program. It's a week boot camp here in Team Detroit it was. And I didn't know really what I was doing. I just know advertising, that's interesting, you know, okay. So I'm here, I'm the oldest person for sure in the boot camp. So there's like, it's like all college, they were in college or they were like on their way out of college. And so I just, you know, I didn't say I'm just, you know, and so then it's time to start working, deconstructing, analyzing this and that. So they're all Snapchat, this and that. And so I didn't, you know, I wasn't like, oh, I don't know how to do that or anything, you know, in terms of technology. I was just sat back. So true to what you were saying. So I'm sitting back for like the first day and a half, you know, and they're all like, oh, group me, we're gonna group me, this and that. I'm just like, yeah, sure, add me, you know. So they're all like, bing, bing, bing. I'm like, so Google Docs, this, she's doing the slideshow and this, and I'm watching. And so then by the day and a half, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, you didn't see what I added to Google Docs. I got that. So what you're saying, like, it just takes like a few hours of, you know, of course I go home and get the kids down and they're all like, oh, we're at the club. And I was like, can't do it. Nice tomorrow, you know. But then it's like, okay, when I did get like my glass of wine and the kids are asleep, I was like, oh, this is okay, so what they meant is you take this and you enable that. Okay, got it. Next day, I'm on it, you know, so it takes like, you know, you can catch up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, I was talking to someone the other day who described how lawyers invent vernacular so that they can charge you the $1,000 an hour. Yeah, it's like, and we don't do that, you know. I mean, they have a very specific reason to create that separation. We don't have any need for that. So there are a lot of, and I think that's true for probably most disciplines, where, you know, at a entry level or mid level, you know, you can probably get there pretty quickly. That's the great thing about today, you know. You don't have to go to the library. You can still go to the library. Libraries are nice. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment. I think that these events are really great, and I think it's really important and strategic from your point of view. You can't hire everybody here, but you may see some talent here that you can place in maybe your accounts that kind of builds a relationship between, say, Ford and Team Detroit. And that only strengthens the whole relationship between the client and the agency. And you know, you've got a dedicated person that maybe didn't work out here, but you place them in the Ford and they become a very loyal follower. And they're going to make sure that that relationship really works. So I just think it's a real smart practice, whether an agency or possibly a law firm or anybody else that has big clients that they work with. It's really
I mean, again, I love adults, you know. I think you know, the more adults I run into, and I know we're not really all. So you're an adult. You're an adult when you can. Actually, I said this. Someone quoted me this weekend. You said this. I'm like, I said that. You're an adult when you can forgive your parents. That's what defines an adult. Oh, that's pretty good. That's very impressive. I don't know why they said it. She might have me confused with somebody else. But I like adults, you know. So that's why I think that this gathering is a really good way to bring adults back into a workforce. And again, I think that the more we can say this isn't, there are tactical reasons to come and do this, but there's a broader strategy at play here. And I think that the more that we as a total group can embrace that strategy and broadcast that strategy, the better it'll be for everybody everywhere. So that's just all that's sort of like job one, I think, is to say, okay, here's an idea that makes a lot of sense. Who else is doing it? And if not, why not? Yeah.
All of the ventures that you have outside of these four walls, Nora, the clothing store.
It's a design housewares store. We have some sweatshirts, but not a lot.
Are those your hobbies? And how do they fuel what you do within these four walls?
It's a really good question. And I didn't really have an answer until the other night when I was up at 2 a.m. with my eyes wide open. Each of my projects has artistic angle, right? So Signal Return is about the print arts, Write a House is about the written arts, Nora is about design and the sort of physical arts, Gold Couch Gold is about the culinary arts, right? So when I came to Detroit, first thing people told me was don't move downtown. Right? They were like, "You're gonna die. You're gonna die." And I was like, I'm a city person. I'm not living in the fucking suburbs. This is an extreme reaction. And now I sleep at my girlfriend's house in Grosse Pointe all the time. That totally ruins my street cred. But to me, and I was trying to recruit people here from other places to work in our department. And I was having a hard time because, honestly, a decade ago when I moved here, Detroit was really not what it is today in terms of, its popular image. And there are a lot of explanations for how it got there. I'm writing a book about it, kind of. The biggest one being the air conditioner. The second one being the Republican Party. But I felt like one of my jobs as a leader of this agency was to address that, was to lean into that, because I needed to recruit people here. I've had incredible luck recruiting people here. I've recruited people here from Manhattan and from San Francisco and from, Southern California, the beach. Lots of people, they're mad at me now, but I did a great job. So. And so those places, to a great degree, are attempts to tell the story of this place in an artistic way. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And again, thank you for coming out. And your only homework assignment is to ask every other agency when their returnship is.
I'm happy to help for free.
Thanks.
Thank you.